Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, I have collaborative family law attorney D. Christopher Osborn, principal of the Osborn Conflict Resolution and ReelTime CLE, calling in all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, Chris, who is considered to be somewhat of an authority in the area of family law, is here today to talk about a very interesting topic. See, Chris has taken some time out of his busy day to talk about how taking a collaborative approach to your divorce can save substantial amounts of money, time, and stress. Now, who in the world doesn't want that? So, if you are one of the increasing amounts of people in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and you're wanting to know more about today's topic, it might just be a good idea for you to, down tools, log out of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anything else you happen to be doing which may cause a distraction. Grab yourself a notepad and pen and get ready to take some notes as we listen in to what Chris has to share with us today. So, with that said, let's not keep him waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks so much, Stuart. It's great to be with you here.
And it's great to have you on board as well, Chris. Let's just jump in. Briefly, in your own words, of course, please describe the kinds of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help.
Sure. So as a collaborative family lawyer, I'm typically dealing with either a husband or a wife or a mother or father, and they may have one of those roles, they may have multiple of those roles, and they're in some kind of situation where either there is a marriage that's splitting up or has split up in the past, and the arrangement that initially they had made on how to deal with finances or children or custody, visitation, things like that, has sort of fallen apart. In other words, everybody who comes and needs to consult with me is either has already left their spouse or significant other, or is in the process of leaving, or has been left oftentimes. And they come with a lot of different potential legal issues that have to be sorted out somehow. And of course, courts are the way that people typically understand these things are worked out, particularly at the end of a divorce when people are perhaps at odds with one another, very unhappy. And problems they've been brewing have really come to a head. So I don't really deal with anybody who's in a really super happy, great place, unfortunately. And then the stress of what they're facing, what they might have to deal with as this process, moves forward, and the actual either separation of the marriage or the continued co-parenting of the kids has to play out over time. And so they're often wondering, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take? What's it going to cost? What the heck is going to happen?
So now that we have an idea of who you help, Chris, and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help, we must spend a brief moment letting everybody know that anything that you share from this point on is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of disseminating information. Can we both agree on that today then, Chris?
I agree on that 100%, and I would have said it if you didn't. So
exactly. We've got to be sure about that. Certainly don't want to be making ourselves liable for anything. So with that said then, Chris, and for those people who are out there listening right now, what's the most common misconception surrounding the topic of taking a collaborative approach to your divorce?
Well, I would say I think the most common misconception is that a lot of people, surprisingly, still don't know that there is a collaborative option. A lot of people, when they realize I'm getting divorced either because my spouse is leaving me or I have to leave, they think that they are definitely going to be going into the court process, and they believe it's going to be super expensive and take potentially years. And as a result, that tends to make them think that they need to hire basically a gladiator, a champion, kind of a bulldog type person. And the misconception is they don't realize that that's not the only kind of lawyer there is, and that's not the only kind of process there is before navigating through the various issues that arise when a divorce happens.
Where does that school of thought come from? Where does it originate from? Is it media? Is it TV? Where does it come from then, Chris?
Well, it's a combination of those things that you mentioned, media, TV, and also people's other experiences. They talk with their friends and relatives. And it's also due to the fact that collaborative family law, collaborative divorce, is still relatively new in the grand scheme of things as far as related to the history of our country. It's really only about 20, maybe a little bit more than 20 years old as a model itself, as a different way of approaching divorces. And so it still hasn't quite made the rounds. Everybody doesn't quite even know it's out there. What they see on TV, what they mainly hear is the big fights, the knockdown dragouts, and the kind of ugly stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So based on what you just shared with us then, Chris, and obviously please do keep your clients' confidentiality in mind, please share an example or a case study, so to speak, of how you have helped, or even how you would go about helping somebody who came to you with those challenges, all those misconceptions you just described, and what kind of transformational results you were able to or would be able to gain for them.
Sure. I've got a couple that a collaborative lawyer and I are working with now in their middle-aged, a little bit older, kids, one still in high school, two in college. They've been financially, fairly successful, so they have some resources, but they're not liquid. They've got a house, they've got retirement accounts, so they've got a fair number of assets. And what happened this summer is the wife said she wanted to leave the marriage and wanted to get out. And at first, this was kind of jolting to the husband. He wasn't prepared for this, really didn't want that to happen. And they were originally inclined to go just, what's going to happen? We got stuff to fight over. And they were headed to some fairly well-known, litigation attorneys who are known for being very thorough and attacking and dealing with everything. But somehow they got a referral to me. And I gave them both as a couple what we call an orientation to divorce. So it's not legal advice. It's not forming a relationship with either of them. Just said, hey, look, just so you know, you have other options. You could hire somebody and start filing, a complaint, seeking the relief that you want, seeking alimony, support, all that, fight for custody. And then the other side files an answer, and then you start exchanging documents, formally and all that. But you have another option. And I talked with them about how this collaborative model instead is for people who, even though they have tough issues to work out, they're not able to sit down and kind of divide up everything or figure out what amount of support is adequate. But they need guides through it. But that with a collaborative model, you can get a lawyer whose focus is actually on advocating for you, but doing so with a different set of tools. It's a whole different mindset. Both lawyers come in saying, we want to try to help you guys work things out. And we think if you listen to us and kind of the training and guidance that we have as collaborative lawyers, you might be able to actually work things out, and you'll probably come to a better resolution and a faster one than if you go into the court process and start slinging mud and having a fight. And this couple actually really liked that idea. They said, hey, okay. And so I began representing the husband. I referred the wife to another collaborative attorney. The first attorney she actually got didn't turn out to be quite as collaborative as we hoped. Somebody who's had the training, but maybe didn't quite understand the mindset. Because collaborative is really, we call it a paradigm shift. Because we don't go into fight mode. We don't go into protect mode. We don't go into, let's see what maneuvers we can pull in court that the other side might not pick up on. It's radically different. It's a sharing of information, and it's a commitment to doing what's in the best interest of the couple. And really, when it works well, the couple themselves gets to make decisions, and they're talking, and we're helping and kind of coaching them, or maybe getting a coach or other kind of neutrals involved to help them know how to talk to each other. And now that their relationship is ending, but not keep fighting the same old battles, and be able to kind of look to the future and say, hey, the world has changed. We're not going to be together. We've got to figure out what that means for our kids, particularly. And so this couple in particular has been, they've had a hard journey, because during this process, additional facts have come to light about why the wife is leaving, and the fact that she's may have instigated a relationship with another person. And my client, the husband, found this out, and it's really been upsetting. It's been very destabilizing for him. And it at times makes him want to go, forget all this. I want to go to court, and I'm going to sue, and I'm not going to give anything, all this stuff. And because of my commitment to the collaborative process and my belief in it, we've been able to have conversations about, well, you do have that option. And if you did, here's what it would look like. Here's how things would play out. Is that what you want to sign up for? Is the product that you're going to get at the end of that, this information or the answers that you want to have, or the sense of satisfaction of, kind of protecting things or proving things, is that going to be worth what we can project the cost will probably be? And my client's been able to kind of come around a number of times to go, well, really, no, because I do need my money, to live, to get our kids through college, to, move forward from here. And so I don't want to spend it all, having a big fight. And so we've been able to say, so that means, we take this information and it's relevant. We got to deal with it in the collaborative process. We got to deal with the emotional, pain that he's feeling having found this out, but we can. And we can say, hey, this is meaning, we might not need to meet this week to have one of our collaborative meetings to discuss what's happening, because, there needs to be a little bit of time, a little bit of healing, a little bit of maybe conversation about this between them. That's kind of up to them. But we can pay attention. The beautiful thing about collaboratives, we can pay attention to those emotional dynamics and not stoke the fire and say, well, you're right, let's go to court, let's go kick some butt. But rather we can say, okay, let's take some time to work through this. And the other party and their counsel, have to agree. We take some time to let this sort of settle down and keep moving forward. And we believe the end result is going to be spending less time on things, because, again, a collaborative process is controlled by the parties and when they can get together, not some court calendar. Less money, because we're not trying to fit things into legal boxes and format information for the ways that it has to be presented to court. We can talk about what's important, assuming, again, everybody commits to this process, to share all the information, no hiding the ball, and then let's talk about, what are your interests? What do you need going forward? What do you need going forward? And are there ways to accommodate both of your needs? And so it's really, it's rewarding work, because divorce, it stinks. I could use a stronger word, but I don't know if you're, what the family level of your audience is, but it's awful, as it is. And sort of the collaborative model comes out of the belief that, well, we lawyers, if we can, when the parties are willing to do this, we'd like to be agents of making it better and easier and less a wild, out of control ride, and not, making things worse and making things, complicated and really control.
So Chris, sorry for that, I'm interjecting, but that's a good segue into my next question. For those people who are listening right now, and especially divorcing couples who are looking at divorce, in that unfortunate position, and they have children, how beneficial is the collaborative divorce process, if at all, for those couples with children?
I tell you, it's incredibly beneficial, and that's one of the values that really sold me on this model when I heard about it. Because, number one, if everything goes to court, then you are creating, a lot of people don't expect this at first, but you're creating a public record, which means whatever accusations you make about the other side, particularly when parents try to characterize one another perhaps as unfit or not, I don't want them to have time with the kids unless it's supervised, all this, it's all public record, which means even if you don't tell your kids about it, they could find out about it one day, other people see it. And how do you explain to your kids, hey, I'm going to court and I've got to argue with mom, and my lawyer's going to argue, and we're going to say all this stuff, and kids may be very small, so they may not be aware this is happening, or they could be, if they're 7, 8, school age and older, they kind of pick up on what's going on. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't want to say the litigation process has no place, because there's sometimes, you don't have a choice. One party is not willing to be collaborative, they don't follow through on what they're saying. Sometimes you have to take people to court. But if you don't have to, if there's a chance that you can work things out, then you, instead of doing everything out in public, instead of it making it adversarial, that's the other thing that's so problematic about the litigation process. It is adversarial. There is a winner and a loser, at least on an issue-by-issue basis, and it's kind of black and white. You flip the lever up, I find what the husband says is correct and not wife, or vice versa. There's some room for middle ground, but the courts don't have the time to really get into the nuances of everything. And, the course of even if it's a several-day hearing. In the collaborative process, you're not doing all that out in the open, and you're not just trying to attack the other side and undercut their credibility. You're actually saying, you know what, the other side is a human being too, and they have a perspective, and their perspective is different from mine. But there might be a place for both of our perspectives, and we can try to, focus on getting the best outcome here, given that the dream of our marriage or relationship is now dead. But what can we, model going forward? And that's the best thing for the kids to see, is if the parents can model being grown-ups and dealing with one another with respect, even though they're at cross purposes, even though they're very hurt, if they can model for kids, you know what, this is going to happen sometimes. Maybe not with your spouse, but it might happen with coworkers, friends, whatever. But there's a way to disagree and have a dispute respectfully and without, attacking and defending and causing more harm than is already happening. That's a beautiful thing. And then the last thing, just on that topic, the collaborative process also allows the employment or engagement of neutrals, of coaches or financial counselors, a divorce coach, a conflict coach, who can actually speak to, hey, let's connect with the kids and find out, how they're doing. And let's give some guidance jointly. A divorce coach or a family communications coach, counselors get involved in this as a neutral, not having to come to court and try to prove something, and then the other side's going to get their own expert of the same kind and try to prove the opposite or something different. But rather, you jointly, the collaborative parties would jointly hire, say, a counselor or somebody to say, hey, they talked to the kids, and they can kind of give a voice to the kids and say, here's what they wish you guys would do. If you would listen to them, this is what they would say. And it takes some of the pressure off of the kids of having to, figure out how to speak up for themselves, which is a really hard thing to do. You can feel like you're, being asked to pick a side and things like that. And most kids, no matter how bad things are, don't want to do that if they don't have to. So there's a lot of protection for the kids, both from the privacy to the process and even to the expertise that you can bring in, that really is modeling, again, something super important for them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those insights on the topic of collaborative law, especially as it relates to children. Being a child of divorce myself and having experienced a very volatile, a very violent breakup between my family, and carrying the guilt of that into adulthood, into my late 30s, before I was able to, discover the tools and resources to be able to deal with that. I really appreciate you taking the time out to explain that in such detail.
Well, I appreciate that. That's part of my motivation as well. Having seen kind of some stuff that I saw, and if we can, it's going to be a hard event for kids anyway. If we can make it less hard and less traumatic, that's good.
As a reminder, my guest today is collaborative family law attorney Chris Osborn, principal of the Osborn Conflict Resolution and ReelTime CLE in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he's here today talking about how taking a collaborative approach to your divorce can save substantial amounts of money, time, and stress. Now then, Chris, with that in mind, and for those people wanting to know more, what's the most common but unknown pitfall that they need to be aware of, regardless of what situation they find themselves in?
I would say a pitfall that really came to light in this last circumstance I was just describing is that there may be some lawyers in any community, there may be some in our community, who hold themselves out as collaborative. And either they don't necessarily have the collaborative mindset, they haven't really bought into it fully. To be done right, it requires some familiarity with counseling, therapy, kind of having done some of your own work to understand, when am I helping and hurting a particular situation? What are my emotions? How do they come into play? Me as the advocate, and certainly having an eye for that as my client. Some people think that, well, just because I'm not going to court, that means I'm collaborating, or because I'm generally agreeable. But that's not the full paradigm shift. Really getting out of sort of position-based thinking, and I'm going to argue this, and you're going to argue this, and my position is this, and your position is that. It's really, collaborative law at its core is moving away from that kind of thinking to looking at, what are my clients' interests? And the other side has interests too, and they're probably fairly legitimate. And we want to be looking for common ground and places to build bridges, not ways to, undermine the other party's foundations. And so I think folks really need to, ask some questions. Don't just, look at a label or what somebody says, on their website or promotes themselves, but really ask some questions like, so tell me about, success stories of collaboration. Tell me about when collaboration didn't work, and interview a few lawyers to be able to, know that you've got the right fit. Because there's a lot of different personality styles out there, and they make a difference, particularly in the collaborative context.
So, Chris, let me ask you this. How long have you been a practicing attorney?
I've been practicing law since 1995, so 22 years.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question. In all of those years that you've been out there helping those clients, whether it's in mediation or now in collaborative law, what's most important to you on a personal level then, Chris, about being able to help those clients to achieve their desired outcomes?
I think what's most important to me is actually being able to focus on what the client's desired outcomes are and to help them sort of work through. Of course, most clients typically want, everything now and not to cost anything, and they don't want to have to give anything up to the other side. And of course, there's usually not a result that will get you there because the other side is just as committed to their position. And so I like and value the opportunity to help clients sort of prioritize, say, hey, you're probably not going to end up with everything you want, but what things are most important and what things can you, maybe give on a little to get the things that are most important to you. And let's see how that fits with the other side. Let's try to make this not just a zero sum, I win, you lose proposition. And so really the opportunity to listen to clients and find out what is most important, what are your goals here, and which ones can we achieve, and which ones is the legal system effective to provide, and which is it maybe not. If you come to the legal system, you want vindication and retribution, you may or may not end up with that, even after all the process and all the litigation efforts in the world. And so helping people sort of orient to there's only so much the legal system can do, and it may or may not be a satisfying experience. You should at least be aware of that going in and factor that in as you choose among the options before you.
Okay, Chris, so let's talk a little bit about your background and especially your formal education and your experience as it relates to the topic of family law.
Sure. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and majored in English and political science, and then went straight to law school at the University of Virginia and was fortunate to be able to attend that university. And coming out of law school, I did some work in insurance defense, and I clerked for a federal magistrate judge for several years, a fantastic individual, still a good friend and mentor of mine, and really did that as a way to see and meet some of the other lawyers in town and figure out more of what I wanted to do. And then I worked for a small firm and a mid-sized firm for probably the next 12, 13 years, and was a partner in a law firm for a while, doing a lot of construction and real estate litigation, things like that. On the side, I developed a continuing education company. That's the ReelTime CLE company that you mentioned earlier. And my partner in that is a former lawyer who decided he didn't like practicing law and became a mental health therapist. And he and I got together and started doing continuing legal education programs for lawyers to help them pay attention to the mental health aspects of what we do, both for the sake of their clients, but also for their own sakes. And I found just a passion there of where I really like the intersection of therapeutic counseling, psychological type insights with law. I never would have thought that I'd even know, that they had much to do with one another back in the day. And so that's kind of what our CLE programs focus on. And that's what I love about collaborative law. It marries the ability to kind of have some, counseling type mindset insights with the legal knowledge, the legal know-how and the legal expertise in the litigation realm. So I actually spent 3 years as a professor at the Charlotte School of Law, teaching, because I got a chance to do more of the teaching stuff that I was getting into with the continuing education, and have a chance to explore some of these kind of topics that were of interest to me, and a school that was really committed to educating lawyers to be whole, well-rounded persons, not just legally analytical machines. And then I left that a few years ago to re-enter private practice, and that's really when I started thinking more about, I think I want to have my own firm, and I want to, figure out what kind of lawyer I want to be, not necessarily what kind of law I want to practice. When I heard about this collaborative model, that was really just music to my ears, because that's the kind of lawyer I am. That's the kind of lawyer I want to be, and it's been a real pleasure and a privilege to try to develop that practice and help people in this kind of new way with a couple different sets of tools.
Okay, Chris, so when you think about the kinds of people who come to you for your help, the ones you described right at the beginning of our conversation today, and they're wanting to dig deeper into the topic of saving substantial amounts of money, time, and stress through using the collaborative divorce approach, What would be your final thoughts that you'd like to leave them with before we move on to our last question for today?
I think the main thing I would want folks to think about is to really, do some research. Of course, talk to colleagues and friends who may have been through the divorce process and certainly hear about their firsthand experiences. And be careful, take everything that you hear sort of with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of mythology and a lot of, outlandish stories. And really do some research on the kinds of approaches that lawyers can take. And then I would say, and this is a little bit, counterintuitive it sounds to saving money, but talk to one or two or maybe even three lawyers before you commit, because the personality fit with your lawyer, the ability to trust that they have your best interest at heart and that they have a broad enough skill set to really address the particular difficulties and nuances of your situation. That's super important, and you can't necessarily get that certainly from just a website, just a phone call. You really want to spend time with it's worth some interviewing and kind of know that you're in the driver's seat as a client. You have a matter, and any lawyer is going to be intrigued by and hopeful at the opportunity to help you. But you get a choice, and you might want to talk to a few before you actually make that call to make sure that you're really going to be comfortable with this person, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. And you're going to be talking about the most intimate details of your life or your kids' lives, possibly. And you want to make sure that the person you talk with is somebody that you feel comfortable in trusting that to, and that they'll listen to that, honor that, and really keep your purposes and your goals, your interests in mind, rather than just, well, I know how to litigate, I know how to file motions, so that's what I'm going to do next. If you're looking for somebody who can tailor the approach to your situation and give you what you need.
So if there is somebody out there now, Chris, who's been listening in today or sometime in the future as they listen to the show online, and they want to know more about taking a collaborative approach to their divorce so they can save money, time, and stress, what would be the easiest way for them to connect with you?
Well, the easiest way would certainly be just to send me an email directly. My email address is Chris, CHRIS, at osbornconflictresolution.com. And that's OSBORNCONFLICTRESOLUTION.com. That's also my website, where there's some additional information about my background and some explanatory materials that talk about the collaborative process in particular and the other kinds of law that we handle here at our firm as well. And that's www.osbornconflictresolution.com.
Okay, that's all we have time for today, folks. Again, you have been listening to collaborative family law attorney Chris Osborn. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Chris. You have certainly demonstrated that you are a true educator, advocate, and trustworthy advisor for your client's success. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Stewart. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it greatly.
You are so welcome. I'd also like to say a big thank you to you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in. Without you, we wouldn't have anybody to do a show for. So thank you for joining us on this insightful and informative discussion with one of the leading collaborative family law attorneys in the Charlotte, North Carolina area today. Again, a reminder, his name is Chris Osborn. Make sure you do check him out, send him that email, visit his website. There are some great resources on there. Whatever you do decide to do, I'm sure that after listening to Chris today, and I'm sure we've only touched the tip of the iceberg, you are going to be in a great place to get started. So that's it for today, folks. Again, my name is Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading family law professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present, and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.